Finding success is rarely straightforward. For most people, building a reputation and achieving recognition requires unwavering dedication and relentless effort, putting in the hours to reach their goals and, more importantly, establishing a lasting legacy. It's fitting then that the first original project from the Valencia, Spain-based indie game studio Digital Sun is Moonlighter, a game about that very concept. You see, the studio was founded by Javier Jimenez, an enterprise software entrepreneur and lifelong gamer who decided that he wanted to work in an industry he was truly passionate about. He did that by creating Digital Sun in 2013. Although neither he nor his employees had any prior experience in game development or navigating the complexities of that world when they started. All they possessed was a burning passion for games and a deep desire to eventually be able to create their own. With no experience to speak of, Digital Sun started off as a guns-for-hire studio, making games for others while acquiring the knowledge and skills they needed along the way. Every day, they became a little better, a little more confident, and a little closer to their ultimate goal. For comparison, Moonlighter follows Will, an intrepid amateur hero who keeps the family business afloat by day by running the titular shop and ventures into the mysterious dungeons of Rhinoka Village by night to fight monsters and collect loot to sell back at the store. Players guide Will on his dungeon-crawling roguelike shopkeeping adventure, while crafting equipment upgrades, gaining knowledge, and becoming more like a hero with each passing day. Not only does Moonlighter's core concept reflect Digital Sun's own struggles and subsequent rise to greatness, but it's also an idea that is just as fascinating now as it was when it was presented to the world back in 2016. The first 3 years of Digital Sun were spent honing their craft, expanding their skills, and refining their creative vision. During this time, while they continued to work on projects for other clients, the studio was also developing its own game prototypes, laying the groundwork for future success. One of those side projects that occupied the time between the work that paid their bills was Moonlighter. At some point in 2015, the Moonlighter team came to a crossroads. They knew they had something special, but they didn't have the means to fully realize it. Whether it was the relatability of the concept or how engrossing the unlikely blend of mechanics was, they decided to make the leap. More effort was put into the prototype as features and mechanics were fleshed out and expanded, and then the Kickstarter was launched in May of the following year. Kickstarter campaigns aren't anything new when it comes to indie game development, but Digital Sun's situation was a unique case. You have to remember, Digital Sun wasn't exactly a well-known indie studio by this point. They had solid credentials and strong working relationships, but their studio name wasn't often publicized since they completed projects as a service to other companies. They were essentially going into their Kickstarter blind, with no recognition, and hoping they could raise a fairly meager sum of $40,000 to finish Moonlighter's development. To their surprise, the game was 20% funded by the end of the campaign's first day. From that point, the Kickstarter began to balloon as word about it spread, smashing through stretch goals and eventually raising $134,000. That's 335% of the original $40,000 they had asked for. Not bad for an unknown studio. With plenty of money in their coffers and an energized team of 6 devs who believed in their work, full development on Moonlighter began. For as interesting and unique as Moonlighter's concept is, it definitely wears its inspirations on its sleeve. Long before its development was upgraded from side project to primary focus, during the early prototyping phase, the game's creative director David Fernandez suggested the project should have a very specific look and feel. He wanted Moonlighter to channel Zelda games like Wind Waker and the Minish Cap, while also taking inspiration from Ghibli movies like Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind and Princess Mononoke, all of which blend natural and imaginary worlds in colorful, creative ways to create unique, inviting, ethereal locations that have an undercurrent of danger and adventure. According to artist and animator Esther Mari, further inspiration for Moonlighter's world was taken from Animal Crossing, Wakfu, Pokemon, and even Shantae. While the team toiled away in development, other games with similar modern pixel art aesthetics were released that further solidified their artistic decisions, most notably Rogue Legacy and Hyper Light Drifter. While Will's 2D dungeon crawling adventures are undeniably inspired by classic 2D Zelda games, it's difficult to not also reference The Binding of Isaac for the striking similarities they share. Exploring interconnected rooms, picking up loot, and eventually finding a powerful, monstrous boss character while planning for your next run. However, dungeon crawling is only half of Moonlighter's very potent gameplay formula. There is also the shopkeeping aspect of the game, which required its own intense focus and attention to detail in order to create the synergy Digital Sun needed to make Moonlighter's core concept work. For instance, to prevent players from breaking the game economy early on, or just getting super lucky, the devs had to make sure Moonlighter's economy was balanced to perfection. They created a ton of different spreadsheets that outlined the value of each item, and they used this data to carefully control item probability. Their goal in taking these measures was to establish how much money a player could effectively make in each run of each dungeon, and then put a cap on those earnings. There's no way this was an easy feat, but Digital Sun cracked the code somehow. The smooth, natural progression of Moonlighter's economy ends up being one of the aspects that make it shine, however unlikely that might seem in an action game. As Moonlighter neared completion, the equally important and often overlooked aspects of game development came into focus: the business side. Given their successful Kickstarter campaign, it would have been understandable for Digital Sun to self-publish like many other crowdfunded indie games. However, they recognized the complexities involved in publishing and sought a partner to handle these tasks, rather than taking on the responsibilities of PR, marketing, event attendance, and building relationships with players. Javier Jimenez and the Moonlighter team decided to partner with a publisher. They already had the necessary funding, but they needed business expertise to complement their creative strengths. This was a wise and informed decision that allowed them to focus on the game's development while leveraging the publisher's experience in the industry. They reportedly met with several publishers, but ultimately signed on with 11-Bit Studios, the people behind games like This War of Mine and Frostpunk. Jimenez and company were happy with their decision, and it's clear that their partnership with 11-Bit aided Moonlighter's success. When it comes to making games, Jimenez had this advice to share in an interview with MCV UK. Many young studios lack the business skills. It's very good if you're creating video games out of passion and not doing this for the money. We are not in it for the money. We love creating video games, but you need to pay attention to it. Any studio is a business in the end, and you need to pay people. You need to make sure that your game is going to generate enough so you can continue to do more games. And I think that many teams, they may have excellent programmers, designers, and artists, but many lack someone who deals with the business side of things, and that's important. After 3 years of active development, Moonlighter was released for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and PC on May 29th, 2018. A Nintendo Switch port followed 6 months later on November 5th, and it has since been released for iOS, Android, and Google Stadia cloud streaming. Moonlighter can still be enjoyed in most of these places, although it was briefly delisted from Android and iOS before Netflix brought it back to those platforms through Netflix Games. Critical reception for Moonlighter was generally positive across the board. It received Metacritic scores in the 80s for most platforms, with both critics and fans highlighting the game's world, art, and careful balance between action and shop management that kept players invested despite a handful of bugs and some issues with pacing. The only exception is the PC version, which currently sits at a 74 due to issues with controls and bugs that have largely been fixed in the 6 years since release. In that same time frame, Moonlighter has sold over 2 million copies worldwide, making as much as $5.4 million in revenue. All of the passion and effort that Digital Sun put into Moonlighter has definitely paid off. Not only has the game been cited as inspiration for other indie hits like Dredge, but it also put Digital Sun on the map, giving them the recognition and funds to move forward with more of their own original projects. After establishing themselves with the critically acclaimed Moonlighter, Digital Sun showed the power of passion and perseverance in game development. This journey mirrors that of another indie success story, Battle Chasers: Night War. Developed by Airship Syndicate, Night War is a game adaptation of the beloved comic series Battle Chasers, bringing the vibrant world and characters of Joe Madureira's creation to life through engaging turn-based combat and a rich narrative. We covered this topic in detail in this video.